Welcome to the 79th episode in our AI and You podcast series. Today is Saturday, January 8th, 2022, and I'm your host, Vikhar Saidi. I'm a computer scientist and engineer, a lecturer, and a consultant. I'm also the author of several books. My most recent book is about artificial intelligence and is titled The Genome Affair. The Genome Affair is a speculative work. It examines what the world might be like if some of the more extraordinary capabilities forecast to be realized in AI over the next 20 to 30 years were actually realized today. Given the growing list of frightening existential threats humankind now faces, the book pays particular attention to the impact AI is expected to have on world affairs. The book is available in ebook format for those who prefer to read on a digital device, but it's also available in a high-quality paperback edition. The Genome Affair is available on Amazon, so I hope you'll take the time to read it and to leave a review. Amazon book reviews are very helpful for writers. I'm very interested in how science and technology influence world affairs and the big questions facing humankind. Studying at the confluence of the great disciplines of human history, political science and thought, international affairs, science and technology offers a deep understanding and pedagogically important lessons of how advances in human endeavor have influenced and impacted civilization. I'm available to give talks on artificial intelligence and its related technologies, and on the impact AI is expected to have or is already having on our world. If you'd like to get in touch with me to arrange a web-based event or consulting meeting with your company or organization, you can find my contact info in the podcast notes below. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it with others if you find the content valuable. Thank you. And now, on to today's podcast. In our last podcast, episode 78, I spoke about AI and speciation, symbiosis, and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In today's podcast, episode 79, I'll speak about AI and disinformation, echo chambers in an age of division. Let's get started. Disinformation, or its contemporary moniker, fake news, isn't a new phenomenon. In fact, it's something that humankind has lived with for centuries and millennia. Since the beginning of human history and continuing right through the Middle Ages, the medieval period, disinformation was perpetuated via gossip in the royal courts and similarly in the marketplace. It was also employed by generals and politicians to gain strategic or tactical advantage in battles or in negotiations. Since the Renaissance and the commercialization of the Gutenberg printing press, some books arriving in the marketplace contained outright falsehoods. But people believed them because they trusted everything in print. They'd read certain fallacies in a book, a brochure, or on a poster, but because of the hallowed aura surrounding books in their culture, they couldn't accept that these were falsehoods. Historically, most cultures have had great reverence for texts and for those who engage in writing them, so they implicitly trusted any information rendered in print. Before the Gutenberg printing press, codices, in other words handwritten, hand-bound, and hand-decorated volumes, were the exclusive purview of the aristocracy, the church, and royals, the nobility of society, and as such, virtually all people held these codices in the highest esteem and as beyond reproach. Questioning the veracity of texts was never a consideration. But as society transitioned from the Renaissance and into the modern world, they gradually learned to question the source of the information in books. One way for them to do this was to question the credibility of the publisher of a book, magazine, or newspaper. If information came to them via a reputable publisher or some other credible institution, citizens learned to expect that the information in them was probably reliable and truthful. But other sources of information, tabloids and other salacious forms of journalism, continued to permeate the marketplace and were broadly recognized and understood by society to be embellished truths or outright falsehoods. During the Middle Ages, Heinrich Kramer, a German Catholic clergyman from Speyer, wrote a book titled The Hammer of the Witch, or in Latin, Malleus Maleficarum. It was a do-it-yourself manual on how to identify, capture, torture, interrogate, and then murder someone suspected of being a witch. Given the apparent proliferation of witches during that era, it seems everyone needed their own copy for their household, and so Malleus Maleficarum became a bestseller. People genuinely believed in witches, and thus the book had great value in society. Of course, the entire episode surrounding witches was irrational and utter disinformation, but it didn't matter since so many people believed it, despite the efforts of many of society's leaders to reason with them. Until society eventually accepted that the notion of witchcraft was an outright falsehood, many thousands of innocent women faced terrible inquisitions and ordeals before finally being put to death. Malleus Maleficarum taught their executioners how. The situation in those times is not unlike our present reality, in which people trust news or other information because it's being presented to them on the internet, via their social media news stream, or via their WhatsApp message stream. For them, the internet is held with the same reverence as books and codices were by their forebears 5 centuries ago. But today, something is very different, and that something is artificial intelligence. AI is a proxy or substitute for human intelligence. Wherever human intelligence is required, AI can step in, and it can do so with a level of performance that increases with each passing day. As a result, there's been a fundamental change in how the decision is made on which news stories and current events we are presented with on the various digital platforms we commonly use. And that change has been brought about following the introduction of AI in social media. The most credible, powerful, and technically sophisticated platforms, including Facebook, Google Search, and YouTube, deliberately mislead hundreds of millions of people around the world with near impunity, and they do so purely for commercial benefit. The objective of these tech giants is to keep users, ordinary citizens, engaged on their platform for as long as possible, so they can continue to collect information about them, with an end goal of perpetually refining user profiles. This enabled these tech companies to increase the value of these profiles to potential advertisers, whilst simultaneously serving them with advertisements. The artificial intelligence-enabled algorithms behind these social media platforms have learned that tailoring each individual user's news stream with news, images, and videos, essentially preparing a customized, dynamic newspaper for each user that makes them angry, agitated, or excited, is very effective in maximizing the time they will spend on these platforms. Consequently, the platform user gets trapped in echo chambers where they continue to hear stories and see videos that align with the narrative that they are most comfortable with, regardless of whether that narrative or any supporting stories they're presented with are true. Unfortunately, the goal of the AI agents behind the platforms isn't to ensure that society is presented with balanced, objective, or truthful stories, in other words, the function of the fourth estate, but simply to maximize user engagement and thus profitability. Perhaps most alarming is that it isn't unsophisticated tabloid journals that are perpetuating disinformation throughout society, but rather it's the work of the most advanced, sophisticated, and wealthiest technological institutions in the world who have deftly avoided accountability. They move so quickly that the damage has often been done long before legislators and regulators begin to understand the consequences. There are many fault lines in American society today. Culture, education, income, race, and rural versus urban lifestyle are the major ones. But regardless of which individual fault line or set of fault lines trouble a particular individual or community, the use of AI in social media is exacerbating societal divisions and tensions to a point where there is no possibility of people from different sides of the fault lines to engage with one another and talk about their differences. They are now so filled with hate towards one another that reconciliation seems all but impossible. The owners of and investors in AI-enabled social media platforms are the richest companies in the history of commerce, and they have no incentive to change their ways. The cozy financial relationship between these firms and the legislative bodies and regulatory agencies precludes any possibility of addressing the disinformation crisis that is now tearing through the fabric of America's liberal democracy. There have been congressional hearings, but the requisite changes are nowhere in sight. And with a midterm election this autumn and a general election in 2024, the consequences of our state of political divide may be devastating. On January 3, 2022, a poll from NPR and Ipsos indicated that nearly 70% of Americans believed that their democracy is in crisis, and the events of January 6, 2021 may be but a prelude to what lies ahead. It is unclear whether our polity will endure these tests. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm trying to follow the TED Talk format, and so I'm keeping these podcasts under 20 minutes. Let me know what you think. I hope you'll find these insights into artificial intelligence helpful, and I hope you'll read my new book, A Affair. It's on Amazon. Until next time then, this has been the AI and You podcast with author Vikar Saeed.